It started when Nathan Carter stopped sleeping, not by choice. God, he wanted to. Every night he'd crawl into bed exhausted, his body screaming for rest. But the moment he closed his eyes, something in him refused to let go. At first, it was insomnia. Then it turned into something else. Sleep would come in short, stuttering bursts. And in those fleeting seconds, he dreamed. Not vague, harmless dreams. No, these were sharp, vivid, uncannily real. He could smell the metal in the air, feel the wind tugging at his sleeves. And always, someone was calling his name. Nathan. The voice was never clear. It wasn't angry. It wasn't kind either. Just there, like it belonged to someone who knew him far too well. He told his wife, Marianne, but she dismissed it as stress, told him to take a few days off work. But Nathan knew. These weren't dreams. They felt like memories of something that hadn't happened yet. The worst ones began 3 weeks later. In the dream, he was always walking through a dense forest. The air was wet, the trees so tall they swallowed the sky. And there, just ahead of him, was a little girl. Barefoot, dressed in a pale nightgown. Her back was always turned. Her dark hair stuck to her face like she'd been crying. "Hey," he'd call out, feeling a panic he couldn't explain. "Hey, are you lost?" But she never turned. She just started walking deeper into the fog. And Nathan would follow, always follow, heart pounding, unsure why he felt such urgency. And every time, just as he got close enough to touch her shoulder, she'd whisper, "You left me." And he'd wake up screaming. Desperate, Nathan booked a session with a sleep therapist. Dr. Harrow was calm, methodical, and clearly used to cases like his. She asked if he had a history of sleep paralysis or night terrors. "No," he replied, "but it feels like someone else is in my dreams, like I'm visiting them." Dr. Harrow raised an eyebrow but said nothing. That night, she suggested he try a lucid dreaming exercise, some method to help take control of the dream. Skeptical but desperate, Nathan followed her instructions, and it worked, too well. In the dream, the girl was there again, but this time, when he spoke, she stopped. Slowly, she turned to face him. Nathan gasped aloud in the dream. The girl's eyes were black, not empty or evil, just bottomless. A void. And as he stared, the trees behind her began to bleed. "You were supposed to take me with you," she said, her voice trembling. Nathan woke up gasping, soaked in sweat, his heart racing like he'd run for miles. He took time off work. Marianne begged him to see someone else, maybe a neurologist. But Nathan had started noticing things in the real world. On the street, he'd spot flashes of the girl's white dress in alleyways. In his office building's reflection, he saw her face staring back behind him in the glass. Once he even heard the whisper outside of sleep. In the daylight, Nathan, he broke down that night. Marianne found him curled up on the bathroom floor, whispering, "I think I'm losing time." He started dreaming while awake. Blackouts, 5-10 minutes gone. Then he'd blink and find himself standing outside the house, barefoot in the cold, or sitting in the dark garage with no memory of getting there. And always, the girl. He set up a camera in the bedroom. If he was moving in his sleep, he needed to see, needed to know what was happening. That night, he slept for 3 full hours, the first time in months. When he reviewed the footage, he stopped breathing. At 2:13 a.m., he sat up, His eyes were open, but they were blank. His mouth moved, lips forming silent words. Then slowly, he stood, walked to the corner of the room, and stood there for a full hour, just staring at the wall. But it wasn't until the very end of the footage that he screamed, because the camera glitched just for a second. But in that second, behind Nathan was the girl, closer than ever. Terrified, Nathan checked into a motel 2 towns away, thinking maybe the house was the problem. But the dreams followed, except now he wasn't dreaming anymore. He'd blink and he'd be inside the forest, hear the birds, smell the dirt, feel the cold mud under his feet. He tried clawing his way out, screaming for someone to wake him, but no one ever came. Then one night, Marianne called in tears. She'd woken up and Nathan was gone. She checked the garage, the basement, even the attic. Nothing. She called the police. He was found 2 hours later, asleep in an abandoned shack in the woods. No memory of how he got there. No phone, no shoes. "I think I'm stuck," he whispered to Marianne that night. "She's trying to bring me over." Dr. Harrow visited him at home. She looked pale, shaken. "I reviewed your EEG scans, Nathan," she said quietly. "There are sleep signatures showing REM cycles while you're awake. Your brain is slipping in and out of dream states without control." Nathan stared at her, feeling like the floor beneath him had vanished. "Then what happens when I fall asleep permanently?" She didn't answer. That night, Nathan kissed Marianne goodbye and asked her to lock the door from the outside. "If I move, if I try to leave, don't let me out." She cried but obeyed. He lay in bed, took a deep breath, and surrendered to sleep. The girl was waiting. This time, she held out her hand, and he took it. It started on a Thursday night, the kind of dull evening that carries a strange silence. Not quite peaceful but expectant, like the world was holding its breath. David Moore, 47, had returned home late from a draining client meeting. He wasn't the kind to overthink dreams, rarely remembered them anyway. But as he loosened his tie and stared at the silent, empty living room of his apartment, he felt an odd heaviness in his chest. Not pain, just a pressure, like something was leaning in from behind a wall he couldn't see. Later that night, when he crawled into bed, he noticed something strange. His pillow smelled unfamiliar, like old wood and damp stone. "That's odd," he muttered aloud, frowning. His hands trembled slightly, and he blamed it on fatigue. The digital clock on his nightstand blinked 11:41 p.m., its red glow soft and ominous. He exhaled slowly and let the darkness take him. David opened his eyes, but he wasn't in his bed. He was standing, barefoot, in the center of a vast field that shimmered faintly under a violet sky. No stars, no moon, no sound except for a constant, low buzzing, like the static of a broken television. The grass beneath his feet wasn't normal. It had a warmth to it, almost like it was breathing. He looked around slowly, chest rising and falling in confusion. "Is this a dream?" he whispered, voice thin. But the moment he spoke, something shifted in the air. It was subtle, like a change in pressure. Then, about 30 yards away, a figure appeared, a tall silhouette, standing still. David squinted. The man's posture, it mirrored his, a familiar stance. As he stepped closer, his heartbeat picked up. Something was off. The figure wasn't just someone. It was him, or a version of him. Same hair, Same build, same scar above the right brow from falling off his bike at age 9. He called out, "Hey, who are you?" But his voice echoed strangely, bouncing and twisting in the air. The figure turned slowly. The face was his, but stretched into a grin that was too wide, too unnatural. Its eyes were vacant, bottomless. It raised a hand, palm out, and in a voice that wasn't quite human, whispered one word: "Wake." David gasped. His vision snapped, and suddenly he was back in his bed, drenched in sweat. The digital clock now blinked 3:17 a.m. He sat up, breath ragged. "Jesus," he muttered. He staggered to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. But as he looked into the mirror, something made his blood turn cold, written in the fogged-up glass, as if traced by a finger, was the word "stay." He hadn't taken a shower. There shouldn't have been steam. Over the next few days, David couldn't shake the feeling. The dreams continued, more vivid each time. Each night he woke up exhausted, as if he hadn't rested at all. During the day, he found himself drifting off without warning, at his desk, in his car, at stoplights. Every time he closed his eyes, he would find himself back in that surreal world. Endless fields, shifting hallways, and mirrors that didn't reflect what they should. On the fourth night, the dream dropped him in a hallway. It stretched infinitely in both directions. The wallpaper peeled like rotting flesh. No doors, just walls, closing in and lights flickering above. The air reeked of something metallic. He heard water dripping, and as he turned a corner, he saw it again, himself, bent over, vomiting thick black sludge into a sink that hadn't been cleaned in years. His reflection stared back with sunken eyes and cracked lips and spoke through clenched teeth. "You can't keep waking up." He screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a lamp in his real bedroom as he jolted awake. But what terrified him more than the dream was the black stain on his pillow. David stopped sleeping. For almost 3 days, he fought it. Coffee, loud music, even sharp pain. He watched horror documentaries on sleep paralysis, lucid dreams, shared hallucinations. But nothing explained the heat he felt under his feet every night, or why the corners of his apartment seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. By the 5th night, sleep came like a crash. 1 second he was in his chair watching the news. The next, he was standing in a room he'd never seen before. Small, windowless. A bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered wildly, and in the corner, someone stood, facing the wall, sobbing. David approached. "Hello? Are you okay?" he whispered. The figure turned, and again, it was him. But this time, his eyes were gouged out. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. Then, in one sudden movement, the figure reached out and grabbed David's arm, its touch ice cold. David woke screaming. His arm burned, and when he pulled up his sleeve, there were 5 distinct finger-shaped bruises. He installed cameras, 6 in total: living room, bedroom, hallway, kitchen, bathroom, and outside his door. He wanted proof. But every morning the files were corrupted, static, footage wiped clean. The only trace left behind were strange phrases carved onto surfaces. "We see you. He won't wake again. You are home now." He tried calling his doctor, an old friend from college, but when he described the dreams, the man hesitated and then asked, "You're seeing yourself in the dreams, multiple versions." David said yes. There was a long silence. Then the doctor whispered, "I need to tell you something. My brother, he had dreams like this before he disappeared. He said it wasn't just a dream, that it was a place feeding on identity." Now David began noticing reflections that didn't sync. He'd pass a shop window and see himself walk slower than he actually was. Mirrors blinked when he didn't. One night, brushing his teeth, he looked up and saw himself in the mirror grinning, even though his real mouth was closed. It wasn't just the dreams anymore. It had followed him out. His apartment began to rot, literally. Wallpaper peeled. Black mold crept over corners. Lights flickered even after replacing bulbs. One night, he stepped out onto his balcony to get air and heard voices whispering from the trees. His name, over and over. David, David, David. He whispered to himself over and over like a prayer. "I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm awake." But he wasn't. The final night came without warning. He'd been awake for over 60 hours, shivering and hallucinating. When sleep finally took him, it wasn't with mercy. It dragged him down. This dream was different. He was in a room shaped like a brain. The walls pulsed. The floor was soft and wet. At the center sat a thing, not a person, but a shifting mass of flesh and bone, wearing his face like a mask. The thing spoke, in a voice that was his, but cracked and hollow. "We are you now. You didn't leave. You never woke. You belong to us." He tried to run, tried to scream, but there was no air, no exit, no waking up, and there hasn't been since. I used to laugh at people who claimed dreams could be warnings. I thought nightmares were just leftovers from stress or something you ate. That was until the night of October 11th, 2022, when I learned that some dreams don't just haunt you, they wait for you. I had stayed up late, the glow of my laptop turning everything in my apartment a pale, lifeless blue. It was past 2:00 a.m. when I finally dragged myself to bed, eyes stinging, muscles tense. I didn't even pull the blanket over me before sleep yanked me under. But I didn't dream of anything abstract or impossible. No flying, no monsters. I dreamed of my apartment, exactly as it was. Same flickering wall sconce, same ticking clock, same dead plant in the corner. It was uncanny, but I wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was just me, sleepwalking in the dream. But as I turned toward the hallway, there he was, standing still, almost too still. It was me, my clothes, my posture, everything down to the scar above my left eyebrow. But his face, God, his face, his jaw hung too loose, sagging slightly as if the bone had come unhinged. His eyes were dead, yet staring right at me with this blank, endless hunger. I tried to move, to speak, but my voice came out like static. The air grew thick, heavy, and I could hear something breathing, raspy and slow, not from him, but from behind me. I turned around and everything went black. I shot up in bed with a scream caught in my throat. The clock on my nightstand read exactly 2:13 a.m., the same time I had laid down. But I knew I had been somewhere. I could still feel the cold floor under my feet. The next night, I hesitated before going to bed. I turned every light on, drank coffee, paced. But eventually, exhaustion won. Again, I found myself in the apartment. Again, exactly the same. But this time, the copy of me was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, facing away from me. I called out, no response. I stepped closer, slowly, the way you might approach a wounded animal. And then he turned around. The same twisted jaw, the same lifeless stare. But now there was a smile, subtle, thin-lipped, completely devoid of warmth. I whispered, "Who are you?" His voice came back layered like two people speaking over each other. "You dream of me." So I wait. I woke up gasping, falling out of bed onto the floor. My phone said 2:13 a.m. again. For days, the dreams repeated. Always him. Always in different rooms. Closer each time. One night he was on my couch, tapping his fingers on the armrest like he'd been waiting a long time. Another night, he stood at my bedroom door, not moving, not blinking. I couldn't sleep anymore. I started locking my bedroom door out of instinct even though I lived alone. I began to notice strange things. My reflection would lag behind slightly when I moved. My neighbour, an old woman who walked her dog twice a day like clockwork, crossed the street when she saw me. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked once, eyeing me like I had blood on my shirt. "You don't look like yourself lately." I went to a sleep clinic. I told them I was having vivid dreams. The technician nodded politely, probably thinking I was overworked. They wired me up and let me sleep in one of their white, sterile rooms. I was out within minutes. And sure enough, I dreamt. But this time, I wasn't in my apartment. I was in the clinic room. And he was standing over me. He leaned down, jaw twitching, and whispered, "This isn't your body anymore." I woke up screaming. The staff said I'd been completely still the entire night, no movement, no restlessness, but my heart monitor spiked at 2:13 a.m., the exact moment I had seen him. I checked into a cheap hotel on the edge of town, figured maybe new surroundings would block him out. That night, the dream came again. This time, he was in the bathroom, writing something in steam on the mirror. I got closer, my stomach dropped. It said, "Thanks for the invitation." He turned to face me, his jaw cracked open wider than ever before. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. He reached for me. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The bathroom mirror was fogged up, and though the steam was fading, one word remained: mine. Things got worse. I stopped dreaming in bed. I started dreaming while awake. Once, while riding the bus, the world around me blinked. Suddenly, I was back in the hallway of my dream. I saw him staring out the window. I blinked again and was back on the bus, but everyone was looking at me. One guy even said, "Hey man, you just screamed." At work, I caught myself staring into blank monitors for minutes at a time. My co-workers noticed. One of them even said, "You're not you." My reflection smiled at me from the glass of the vending machine, even though I didn't. I reached a point where I was terrified to even blink, but exhaustion is cruel. I passed out in the stairwell of my building. I woke up inside a field under a sky that looked like burning coals. In the distance, hundreds of people wandered, each paired with a version of themselves. Some were hugging, others were screaming. Mine stood just behind me, inches from my neck. "I've lived in your thoughts long enough," he whispered. Time to make it permanent. He lunged forward, merging with me in a sudden, burning rush of pressure. I gasped and found myself awake, in my bed, but something was different. Since that night, people say I've changed. My dog won't come near me. My own sister asked why my voice sounded a little off. The strangest thing, I don't feel tired anymore. I haven't slept in 3 days. I can't. I think he's doing it for me. Every time I look in the mirror, I see myself smiling, even when I'm not. I try not to look anymore, but at night, sometimes I catch my reflection blinking after I already have.